Hey out there, this is Thursday, November 21st, 2019. Excuse me. And it's just about 6 minutes past 8 in the morning here in Northern California. Today, as usual, I get into a lot of different stuff. I like to reestablish the reason I put out this video series over the years. And it's basically to share what I know about what I would call psycho, spiritual, financial matters. What I have deduced, gleaned, observed through living it, empirically speaking. And the reason I do this is to empower my fellow human beings. I want to be a friend. I want to be a good brother to my fellow human beings. I have goodwill toward men in my heart, and I just want a better world. And I realize that a better world is something that none of us can go alone. Because if that better world that you are imagining and yearning for and striving for and working for day to day in your life doesn't include your fellow human beings, then it will not lead to true happiness. And at the end of the day, I think that we should all understand what we're looking for, at least. We're looking for true happiness, not pseudo happiness. We're looking for permanent happiness, not temporary happiness. And so we need to be aware of this thing we refer to as reality, and how it's very reasonable to beg to differ with the so-called reality we're handed from birth. And we're forced to live day to day from cradle to grave. We don't have a choice about it. It's not like you can say, well, I want to live in a world without any money at all. Just like all the other creatures, I want to be free of this substance because I see how it's used to enslave people in a legal manner by forcing them, coercing them to do things for money. And consequently, if they don't do those things for money, then there is a price to pay. There's punishment. So in other words, you really don't have true freedom in that sense. It's certainly not total, absolute, unconditional freedom. None of us have that. We're forced to comply, to conform to the current establishment. And if we don't, there's a price to pay, and a very heavy price to pay, which involves our very right to survive, to live, to exist. And it's referred to euphemistically as a cost of living. And we're also trained, inculcated, indoctrinated, programmed, conditioned to accept this as just the normal. Of course, there's a cost of living. It's just a given. I mean, nothing's free, right? And who's telling us these things, though? You understand? It's people with an ulterior motive. People that are the most shrewd people, the most evil people, if you use the archaic definition of the term, which we should, because nowadays we exalt people that are shrewd and we say, oh, they're savvy. They're astute business people like Trump and all the other multi-billionaires out there. And we should all gravitate and try to be like them, emulate them, right? Because they're shrewd. But originally this meant evil. Now Jesus told his disciples, be ye as shrewd as serpents. No, he was telling them literally from the archaic definition, be as evil as demons, basically. Shrewd as serpents. Shrewd as devils. That's what he told his followers, his disciples. And anybody else that professes to be a disciple of Christ, i.e. a Christian. This is what you prescribe to, this paradox, this mother of all paradoxes that he handed us and said, this is what it's going to be like to follow me. These are the kind of things, these are the pills you're going to have to swallow, okay, as a true follower of me. So he said to his followers, be ye as evil, basically, as demons. I mean, it's a twist on the term, I agree. He didn't say flat out, be evil. But he made it very clear, because immediately thereafter he says, yet as innocent as doves. So this is what we must maintain: a pure heart simultaneously, concurrently, with being as shrewd as serpents. So you've got to be 10 steps ahead of the evildoers. And I'm here to tell you, you can do that. God will enable you. He will allow you. He will facilitate your ability to be 10 steps ahead of the evildoers. The righteous are far more intelligent than the wicked. That's hands down, that's an incontrovertible fact, okay? That's it. I mean, it wouldn't appear so in this world. You see, this paradigm, this so-called reality we're handed, what I'm saying sounds topsy-turvy. But you understand, the way God sees things and the way we've been trained to see things are about 180 degrees apart. Yes, and that creates a huge paradox, a monumental schism going on. So we're fighting a schism right within our own members as human beings. Our own members being, we got the flesh nature, the carnal nature, and you've got the spiritual nature. And they're at war with each other constantly, because the flesh, the carnal, base nature of the man wants one thing, and the ethereal, the spiritual, the mindful, the heartfelt man wants another thing. And so they're at odds with each other. But then what we've been introduced to, because we're very dynamic and we're supra creatures, we are incredibly unique. We are virtually without potential. So we're completely unique from all the other creatures in that respect. We're these like godlike creatures with unlimited potential. I mean, who could say what our limits are? Nobody knows. We're going with our technology, knowledge. Okay? But you inject into that paradigm where we've already got this thing we're contending with as human beings, this organic schism between the flesh and the spiritual man. And then you introduce into that what these people have trained us to accept as normal, this monetary-based unreality, and we're being told that it all makes sense somehow. Just go along with the program, because this, after all, is the intelligent approach. This is the pragmatic approach. This is the practical approach. This approach shows common sense. This is the path of least resistance. Okay? That's it. So what it amounts to is jumping on the established bandwagon. And today, in 2019, our current so-called civilization, that bandwagon, the wheels are falling off. Okay, you can see it. It's in front of everybody. It's an eyesore. We all know that this tower of bubble, okay, this $23 trillion debt. I was just listening to Michael Pinto. He's a big money manager, and he was saying, hey, it's $23 trillion debt. I mean, these people are very concerned about the moment when the plug is pulled, because there's no way out for the evildoers that have inflicted this enslavement on the public. You got to understand how you're being tyrannized, how you're being enslaved. Everyday people. We're being told that, your house value is everything, when the minority of California residents are homeowners even. So what do the majority of Californians give a flying you-know-what about housing values, when it just means their rents? I mean, higher values, okay, translates to higher rents. It's a direct correlation between the price people pay to purchase a home and the prices that are charged for rents. They call it the going market rate, the market value. It's price rigging, price fixing, it's collusion on various special interest groups, like people in the real estate industry, sales, the mortgage industry, because the more they lend out, the more they make. The investors, the speculators, the flippers, the property management companies, the landlords. Do you understand what I'm saying? Why they would work together? To what avail? For what purposes? Do you understand? This is how they enslave people. This is how they put burden on the backs of men that don't deserve it. They didn't do anything to deserve this. Then we got the Labor Department being deliberately remiss at giving nearly commensurate cost of living adjustments to minimum wage workers over decades, decade after decade. This thing didn't happen overnight. The mess we're in. Okay, that's whose back it's falling on, the low-end workers. And all those are up in a little ways. I mean, if you're making 15, 25 bucks an hour, you're right in there with the minimum wage workers these days. California is leading the way. We're the guinea pig state. They do all their experimenting here. Okay, so if you want to know what's coming across America, remember that old adage. As goes California, so goes the rest of the nation. And I would say by extension the rest of the world, being that America is the most influential nation on earth. Do you understand where this thing is headed? So what they're doing is they're stealing the labors of people. Isn't that another term for slavery, another phrase, another way to put it, a euphemism for slavery? That's what it is. You're on this hamster wheel, and the hamster wheel is not even freewheeling. It's not like your cost of living staying the same and wages are, they're just staying the same. Everything's stagnant, right, in a state of stasis. They would call stagflation, right? It's not like the freewheeling hamster wheel. It's a hamster wheel that keeps getting harder and harder to turn. The nut you have to crack keeps getting harder and harder to crack. The bar you must reach keeps getting harder and harder to reach. Not just if you're trying to purchase a home, but if you're trying to just pay rent on that home. We're in dire straits, my friends. We're being ripped off. We're being taken. Okay, and if you look at history, you'll see what's happened every other time in history. Whenever the oppression gets too severe, there's a bloody revolt. And I think we're too far down the line for any kind of bloody revolt that is similar to anything that's happened in the past. I think the knowledge has increased sufficiently upon the earth that's the finger of God, that's the hand of God working on man to empower them. Again, I want to empower people with accurate knowledge. I want people to understand the difference between truth and lies when it comes to financial, economic matters. What is money? I mean, think about what a scam it is. It's always been a scam. If there was one thing that got Jesus' goat, it was the scam of money. The games that were being played by the shrewd people, the evil people. Again, that Christ followers, anybody that calls themselves a Christian, a believer in the teachings of Jesus Christ, you are facing a humongous paradox. And only God can give you the wherewithal, the strength to contend and cope with this paradox. It's massive. Be as shrewd as serpents. So nobody's smarter than you. Okay, now when it comes to these matters, you could cut to the chase right away. When somebody wants to get into it with financial matters, first establish who you're talking to. Are they an atheist? Are they an agnostic? What are their beliefs? And do they adhere to their beliefs? So you sit them down and you say, well, whose planet? You say you're a believer. So whose planet is this? Who created it? Well, God had created it. It's God's planet. And then you say, well, then who owns the planet? Well, God does. Then you say, you believe that, of course, you're a believer. You believe that humans were made in the image and likeness of God. And so in that sense, we are like little gods, children of God, God's kids, however you want to say it. Yeah, of course, we're all equal. You believe in equality, right? Because, one human life is worth just as much as another. Nobody could argue that. So you establish certain facts with that person. You understand how you're empowered? You're 10 times smarter than anybody else. You've got godly characteristics. You've got the light of truth within you. You understand? You're empowered. You know right from wrong. You know good from bad. You know evil from holiness. You know the facts. You know your stuff. You say, well, how would God have it? You put yourself in God's place, and then you say, have you ever done that? And then you just find, how would God have it? Well, would God have money if he had his choice? And, they would say, well, there's references in the Bible.